We now have a short talk on AI strikes the right chord with financial inclusion. Through its financial inclusion programs, India has penetrated not only in the domestic market and changed lives for the better, but is now taking the success model to different parts of the world. Let's discuss the role of AI in paving the way to innovation, how consumers are assured of the security of their data, and more. And we have a lot more in that discussion. I'd like to welcome Praveena Rai, COO, NPCI, for this session. Praveena Rai is an ex-banker having worked with HSBC, Citibank, Kotak Mahindra Bank in India and across Asia. She is now responsible for running the business, including products, operational and technical delivery. Pleasure to have you here with us this afternoon. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Justin. I'm very happy to be here to speak at this conference on artificial intelligence and the impact that this can have with financial inclusion. So I really want to cover what financial inclusion is and what is the role and impact that AI can play in this journey of taking people from exclusion to inclusion. So when we define financial inclusion and look at the challenges involved, let's first understand what financial inclusion is. It is really about saying that there is a swath of the population that does not have access to all the benefits that financial services industry offers to people today. And this could be from simply owning and operating a bank account, all the way to benefiting from being insured, from having easy access to investment services and getting returns on small savings, as well as access to credit, which really is very empowering in the kind of impact that it can do to self-employment as well as quality of life. If this is what we mean by financial inclusion, the biggest challenges, the barriers towards reaching that, start first and foremost with literacy. In a country where we are very far from having literacy close to 100%, people are not empowered to really be able to make their own decisions because they don't know what they're signing up for. And from there comes financial literacy. Inadequate infrastructure, access to data, access to good internet connectivity, not just having that access, but having access at the level of quality required to really use it effectively. Consumer protection or lack thereof, which means that there could be protection available, but people may not be fully aware of it. And ultimately, the feeling of self-empowerment. So all the enablers could be available, but if ultimately the confidence of that access is not there, the individuals tends to still remain in the excluded category. Now we have a number of enablers, right? So we know that overcoming literacy could be overcome with voice and video solutions. We've seen assisted services, especially in the banking sector, the role of the bank mitra, the business correspondent, the CSC service centers. They've all played a very important role in creating and supporting this transition. Providing solutions in over the telephone as well as in the offline mode would be an enabler to handling inadequate infrastructure. And certainly the empowerment that comes from both identity as well as awareness. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the kind of enablers that NPCI has been working with, experimenting with, and seeing some early success. So for example, when we speak of literacy, we have DigiSati, and I'll be speaking about some of these in a bit more detail. With assisted services, it's really about saying, how do we provide these services in a manner that can get increasingly self-reliant? For phone and offline mode, UPI has its new avatar, which supports this phone and offline services in the form of what is called 123 Pay. Risk management services being made available to protect the customer. And of course, while Aadhaar-enabled payment services provides the reach to one's money to be able to make payments, and from an environment where people had to walk many kilometers to go to their closest branch. Today, there is a AEPS service station within 2 kilometers of every individual in the country. So that's really the potential for the enablers and the role of AI. So the early success in India in the financial inclusion space has certainly been driven by the assisted model. So people are not so aware, people are not yet so literate, and hence they approach a trusted person in the village or in the neighborhood who can actually support them in that journey of having access to their bank funds, having access to all these financial services. And the true journey that we will need to cross right now is to move from this assisted model to a self-reliant model, creating true self-empowerment there. So, few examples. We spoke of DigiSati. Now, DigiSati is actually an initiative that was triggered by the Reserve Bank of India. They had an objective of saying that every person in the country should have easy access to an understanding of all the digital payment systems, and they need to have the ability to seek this information and in a manner that's very easy, very convenient, through multiple channels. And that's how DigiSati was born. This has in fact been launched by the Reserve Bank of India governor in March. It's completely AI based, operates in multiple languages, currently with Hindi and English, with many more languages being planned, providing customer support. And our recent data tells us that about 20% of it is based on conversational query handling, and the rest of it is based on chat handling, but all of it being back-end powered with AI. So social media channels, toll-free call channels, interactive chatbot channels, all of these channels are available. Recently, I would say in a week, about 22,000 queries are handled by the DigiSati system here. So this is one example, early days here. Another example would really be voice-enabled systems on UPI. So again, here we look at financially excluded market, UPI, which many Indians today enjoy. There are about 200 million plus customers who really enjoy UPI. However, they have to be on a smartphone. And while there are about 650 million smartphones in the country, we still have a swath of the population, nearly about 320 million feature phones, or regular phones as they are called, still being used. So it means that UPI is not accessible and available to feature phone users. And hence was born 123Pay. So 123Pay actually has few components. On one hand, every UPI ID has equivalent associated with it, but it also, so not only is this for a person who's on a feature phone, which means no data connectivity, and without the data connectivity, just with voice, just with a phone call, a payment can be made. But it can also be conversational. So even if somebody has a feature phone, has an app, but is not very comfortable and savvy enough to go through various screens and user interfaces to make that payment, they can still have a conversation. And I say, pay my friend so and so, rupees 500, and this value gets paid, once you use the UPI pin. So this is very exciting days. It has led to certain use cases that were not really available as easily in the past. So, for example, gas booking, that's where the early success of 123Pay is very visible. Nearly 1 lakh customers are now using this for gas booking. And use cases that will be very applicable in the early stage itself will be utility bills, recharges, and so on. What we also find here is in terms of how simple this is for people to use, thanks to NLP. So it's currently there in 8 languages. And I'm sure that with this progressing, and a pilot that is going to come into place with Bhashini, and Bhashini has been launched by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. This again is a platform that is going to crowdsource vocabulary in numerous languages at the end of it, or no matter whether they own a smartphone or not. And this really brings true financial inclusion into the picture. Another example we have here is on artificial intelligence-based risk management. Now, risk management, actually, when you look at the financial services, is the first space where AI can play a very powerful role, because it helps to try to predict a transaction that is not kosher. Now, it doesn't mean that, it can clearly say this is a good transaction, this is a bad transaction, but it can predict with a certain probability a transaction which may not be kosher. And what that does is it provides a trigger to somebody who can monitor, somebody who can react, somebody who can then take a decision on whether this transaction needs to be permitted, or this transaction needs to be reviewed before it's permitted, or this transaction should not be permitted at all. And as the data builds up in the system, it becomes very, very powerful. And this takes us back to consumer protection. It takes us back to really helping the customer overcome their own challenges or lack of awareness in terms of how to make payments safely. Because let's remember that we are a country, somebody who has not had this exposure in their life, and even though they may be adults taking care of their day-to-day requirements very independently, they are still getting pushed into an environment that is not in their zone of comfort. So it will take some time for people to understand, get comfortable, get fully aware. And while all the tools for awareness are available, it's also important that these mechanisms support and help that journey until such time we really have a fully savvy and sophisticated user base. So that's really with where we are on risk management. And, I just, wanted to share this. I think, this is Sophia. She's reasonably well known in the AI and robotics space. I wasn't in Hong Kong, happened to have met her and interacted with her in the early days of her launch. And it's very interesting. And when I look at this, and when we say, look, we are now moving from inclusion to empowerment, and today we have this assisted model, we don't need a physical Sophia, right? But we do need many virtual Sophias who then take over that role to help people towards that financial empowerment. So we saw a few examples here. And if we were to really move towards this vision, this dream of full social empowerment for India, then AI is going to play a very important role there. And we need to make it fairly omnipresent for people to have access to the entire life cycle of every financial product, right from wanting to know something, having questions about how something works, how it is safe, being able to transact, being able to look for information. How do I know my balance? How do I know my policy value? How do I know what happened to this investment I had made, however small it may be? Do I have a mechanism of maybe investing 100 rupees every time I have some savings in my day-to-day earnings? So all of these questions, if they can be just posed and if they can be answered, if the entire transaction can be closed, if an issue can be resolved in a manner that's very intuitive, very interactive environment and financial inclusion. So I'd like to end with that. Thank you very much. And over to you, Justin.
Thank you, ma'am, for that informative presentation on what financial inclusion constitutes and what is the way forward for social empowerment.